I'm Durham, and welcome to PaTTAnpod. School districts engage in extensive work to strengthen, enhance, and refine the instruction they provide to students, both academically and behaviorally. Joining me today are three representatives from the school district of the City of York to talk about the work they've engaged in their efforts to grow as a school district. Dr. Jill Koser, Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Deanna Bowman, Assistant Principal for the Jackson K-8 School, and Heather Myers, Assistant Principal for Devers K-8 School. Thank you, ladies, for being here today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Let's talk first, and Jill, I'm going to kind of jump to you right away. Let's talk about the work you conducted, or the district conducted, in identifying the need for professional development to enhance your teachers' kind of base knowledge, specifically pertaining to early literacy skills. How did that really roll out, and how did you engage in that concept?
Absolutely. So when you look at this process and how we've evolved to the point of designing an early literacy institute that we'll be rolling out with our K-2 teachers this August, it really was part strategy and part snowball effect. So when you have a good plan in place and you're intentional with your systems perspective, the effect of that then at the classroom level and in conversations with teachers starts to snowball to get to a point where all of these pieces came together this spring to plan for our professional development. So really our initial starting point was prior to the 17-18 school year in work with PaTTAN and representatives who came down to really do a complete MTSS analysis, looking at our core, looking at our advanced tiers, where we had gaps, where we had overlaps, need, and an immediate first step that was identified was the need for evidence-based explicit instructional resources in phonemic awareness and phonics. We saw that as a significant gap in the resources that we had in meeting the needs of struggling readers. And so we implemented those programs and along with that brought in a universal screener in early literacy. And so those two pieces together, working in tandem, have produced the snowball effect of more conversations about data, more questions from classroom teachers, from principals, from assistant principals around the data, and really it just generated more interest in understanding the science of reading, understanding each of those individual components and how they work together to help kids crack the code. And so we had those pieces going on through our MTSS framework. At the same time, we received a grant to implement literacy intervention in the district. And so we knew when we were designing that program that we wanted it to supplement the instruction that was happening in the classroom. And so again, met with Dawn, met with you and your team, and all I did was say, hey, do you have any articles that you can send me? Do you have any resources? And I think the next day I ended up with...
I remember that conversation. I believe I sent you several.
I would say it does a dozen count as several. Yes. But I spent, several weeks really reading and understanding and diving much deeper than I ever have into the early literacy foundational pieces and what that brain research says. How do kids actually move through those different phases to crack the code and become fluent readers? And so by building that literacy intervention program, we really saw the need to focus our time in the early grades on that explicit instruction in phonemic awareness and phonics. And so in working with your team, we designed for the literacy interventionist just a quick overview of what is the Scarborough Road Model? What are these foundational core understandings that you need to have as a teacher of early literacy? And it just was so well received by that team of interventionists that we knew we had hit on something that was going to be relevant. And so again, the snowball effect of that was the interventionists are working directly with teachers at the kindergarten, first, second grade level, and into some third grade comprehension work. And through those conversations, through more people using our explicit instructional resources, again, conversations started bubbling up. Hey, we'd like to learn more about this. This training sounded really good. How can we get in on it? And then really that piece that connected all of the dots for us in setting the stage for designing professional development in early literacy was sending our team to the Enhancing Early Literacy Outcomes, the EELO series that PaTTAN provides as well, that gave us the background, that gave us the research, that gave us visuals of the rope model that we could link into and connect all of this other work that was happening across the system, but really anchor it in research-based core practices that could be implemented at a district systems level, but also at a school level and a classroom level. And so by pulling all of those pieces together, we started really looking at 1920, what professional development would be most beneficial. And through that snowball effect of all of those pieces, we brought a team together in early April, and that team included all of our core stakeholders. So what we realized is that this work cannot happen in isolation. So we brought in representatives from our special education department, from our English language learner department, from Lincoln IU 12 and their expertise on how to even use TDA progressions at the K-2 level. I mean, we were really looking at this as the whole package of what would be the most critical components for a new teacher, an experienced teacher. What foundation, what base do our teachers need in understanding early literacy and how that develops? And so as a result of that work, we put the call out, gave a general request, hey, this is what we're doing. We had probably 12 to 15 people in the room for a full day really mapping out the specific components, but we didn't start by just diving into creating an agenda. We spent time looking at each grade level and again kind of creating this MTSS map. What are the Pennsylvania core standards that are most critical for early literacy development at each grade level? What are the components of the Scarborough rope model that are connected to those standards? Then what existing resources do we have? Does our curriculum provide the right support for teachers in delivering instruction in these areas? And then what assessments do we have in place that are going to show us if students are progressing on those standards and those core areas of literacy development? So we actually spent time just creating those maps in greater detail, and then that helped us to really pinpoint what specific sessions could look like in professional development for the upcoming school year. So it's really a collaborative process. It was based on a systems level view first, while at the same time taking into account feedback from teachers along the way, classroom visits, learning walks. Our district conducts learning walks every Tuesday morning, and so in 1 month we're in 40 classrooms in the district. And so taking that data and collecting it and looking at how teachers at the early levels are actually utilizing our curriculum materials was critical in designing what professional development was needed. So it's kind of the big at a glance there.
No, and I want to go back to something that we need to highlight here is you had said, we didn't just kind of jump right in and start. We really ran this audit first to go ahead and look at where the gaps were. And through that, you recognize that as a whole, particularly in the early grades, you needed some explicit instruction in phonemic awareness, in phonics. We needed something to look and do kind of a temperature check on all of our students in those skills, and you implemented a universal screener. So, and I want to highlight what you said, we didn't just jump right in, because that would be too often, I think we see that. And then when things kind of crash and fall, people say, well, what happened? We did everything right. But I appreciate that the district took the time to really look through and analyze. And something else that I want to highlight, you had said at a systems level, you really worked on collaboration, pulling all the stakeholders together and having that conversation of, what are you seeing? Do we have the right resources? Let us pull in resources. Let us go out and find those resources and be present with other learning opportunities. I think that plays a large role in the success moving forward, particularly for reading skills and early literacy skills of your kindergarten through second grade teachers. And I know that will kind of progress through then, through third through eighth as well, and continuing on through the high school year. So I appreciate that aspect of it. Kind of keeping with the academics here, Deanna, I want to talk about math right now. And I know that the district has really engaged in quite a lot of work in enhancing the math curriculum, but more specifically, your teachers played a large role in that enhancement work. Can you talk about what the enhancement work looked like and how you got teachers on board and where that really kind of bubbled up from, as Jill had said?
So initially what we started with was the written curriculum that the district had already developed.
Okay.
And with that curriculum came an already established math writing curriculum group. But what we noticed in that group is that there were certain grade levels that were missing, and there were certain buildings that were not represented. So with our academic recovery liaison, Dr. McNeilis, he was able to go around to the buildings, speak to the individual grade levels, find out if there were any teachers who were interested in participating, and came back and we looked at this list. And what we did was we were hoping to have each building represented and at least 3 representatives from each grade level,
Great.
so that we had a wide range of perspectives brought to the table. We were able to accomplish that. We started with 5th and 6th grade first, and what we did was we met, the team came together, with the help of Tara Russo, our PaTTAN consultant. We worked on reviewing the core standards and our current written curriculum, making sure that they were all aligned. Once we were confident that that was the case, then the teachers took the written curriculum and they took the resource that the district provides to deliver that curriculum, and they determined which lessons in that resource were best suited for that particular standard, or the eligible content is really what we focused on for grades 3 through 8. The competencies were what we focused on in K-2, but in 3 to 8, really honing in on those eligible content. And what we found after we looked at that was there was about 30 to 40% of what teachers were teaching that they no longer needed to teach, because they were utilizing a resource from beginning to end that wasn't designed specifically for Pennsylvania core standards, and more specifically for our curriculum and the way we were delivering it. So that was a big enlightening moment
big
for the
aha
teachers.
moment, I'm sure.
It was.
Yeah.
And then once we did that, then we repaced out the curriculum, and we also attempted to make sure that we completed every eligible content by PSSA testing time. That was twofold, because we wanted to make sure that we hit everything in the previous pacing guide. Certain reporting categories were not taught until after PSSA. So we really made an emphasis on that. Once we did that, then we found that there was time at the end of the school year that we also then asked the upper grade level, so 5th grade going to 6th grade, what did the 6th grade teachers absolutely need their 5th grade math students to know? And so we looked at that, and that's what is focused on after PSSA for the 5th grade students to prepare them for 6th grade. It's not necessarily jumping into the 6th grade curriculum, but it's solidifying the foundation skills that they need in order to be prepared for the 6th grade.
So looking at some vertical alignment,
Yes.
which is super powerful, isn't it?
It is. After we did that, then we started to look at our CBAs, our curriculum-based assessments. And we wanted, at the time we had curriculum-based assessments that were each marking period, and there was a thought process there that waiting to determine how a student is doing at 12 weeks wasn't really satisfying our need. So what we did was we designed what we currently call progress checks, and they are done every 3 weeks. And with the teacher's help, we took PSSA released items, we took items from other websites that we could find. Sometimes we developed our own questions, and we put together a 5-question progress check specific to what was taught in that 3-week period, and the students are given that. Now, some of the questions are spiral, so we do go back and loop if there wasn't enough specific content maybe in those 3 weeks. And the teachers have a day to give that test, and then right then reteach any misconceptions or any issues that the students are having, and then we go on to the next 3 weeks. So I think letting them realize too that they are going to have this day, and this day that they had was not actually counted as a teaching day, because they're, teachers are very worried about staying pace with the curriculum.
That's fair.
So they understood that that was not counted as part of that, and just being part of that thought process and that background gave them the comfort and the knowledge to go out, and they presented it to their grade levels. Then we had a great big meeting. The teaching curriculum teams met with their particular grade levels. We just completed kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade last week. They stood in front of their staff, their co-workers. They presented it. They answered the questions. We were there. Dr. McNeilis, Tara, and I, and some other administrators were there in the rooms just as if there were any extra questions that we need to answer. But they presented everything. And all of the response that we're getting back from the staff has been extremely positive.
I'm sure it is. You know, there's something to be said when it's your colleagues presenting the professional development, and that's a huge piece for sustainability in the district, is that you have leaders in the building. You have mathematician leaders in the district that can go ahead and continue to support and sustain the fidelity and reliability of the instruction going forward. But again, I want to highlight that it wasn't a jump-in process. You really took time to, as a district, with teachers, to look at that alignment piece. Are we aligned? Are we doing what we say we're doing? And what we say we're doing, are we actually assessing that information so that we can verify the kids are learning it and that we're doing our job? And that formative assessment piece that you had talked about, that developing that, because you're correct, you're absolutely correct in saying 12 weeks is too long. We can't wait 3 months to then say, oh, are you not doing well? I should have caught that earlier. We just don't have that luxury with our students. I don't want my students to wait 12 weeks. So by creating this formative assessment that the teachers immediately look at and analyze and think through, and what do I need to do with the school? What do I need to do with the teachers, with the students? And restructure lessons or reteach lessons, you know, is quite the powerful piece. And I think that's really going to bring the math capability of the students up to another level. And the fact that it's coming from your teachers, I think, is even that much more powerful. I think it says a lot about the district and where their investment is, and they're investing in their teachers, and the teachers are investing in the students. I think that's quite a magnificent thing about the district to highlight. I want to pivot for a minute to behavior, Heather, so if you'll help me out with this a little bit. As a district, you all have implemented PBIS at the Tier 1 level, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So in thinking about that, you know, thinking about the instruction we now provide to all students about behavior, the instruction we provide to all students about managing their emotions and how to handle something when they're feeling a little bit stressed out. You know, I'm sure you've seen the benefits of that across the board in all grade levels and all buildings, but if you can talk to us about some of the benefits the district has already actualized and where they're hoping to take this work in the future.
So I think one of the first benefits of implementing PBIS within the district is kind of going back to what Jill talked about earlier, was that systems approach. We had to start at the system because we were 9 individual buildings all doing something different, and we needed to unify somehow. We all had our own mascots. We were all doing something a little bit different. We interpreted discipline differently. So we had to start as a system and look at, you know, how do we come together? And one of the first things that we did, and it was tough, but, you know, we all became Bearcats. You know, we were all tied to our individual mascots, but we all became Bearcats, and we're okay with that. You know, what does it mean to be a Bearcat? And from being a Bearcat, we developed our acronym of PRIDE. And PRIDE really sets the stage and the foundation for everything that we follow with PBIS. PRIDE meaning preparation, respect, integrity, determination, and engagement. So everything that we do and teach within PBIS centers around those 5 characteristics. When we talk about positive, when we talk about negative, we always come back to those characteristics and tie it in with the lesson. So we started with our systems approach, and then within the systems approach, then we also then talked about the need for distributive leadership. You know, as administrators, we can't run everything, so the importance was bringing on board our staff. And so the district really had to do a lot of analysis of what resources do we have, what resources do we need, and, you know, through that we identified some key positions that we needed, like behavior specialists were brought on board to assist and really kind of oversee the PBIS process. And then once we have those people now within our buildings, we come back to our buildings and we developed a leadership team, a PBIS leadership team within our buildings. So you have a core group of people within the building who understand, know, and take charge of what we created. Another thing as a district we had to understand and kind of find that common ground again is the matrix. You know, so what does preparation look like? What does it sound like? So that we eventually then, as a district last year, we developed lessons. So that now we have common lessons throughout the district in any grade level. We're all teaching preparation and it looks the same, which is important for us because we know our kids are transient. So it doesn't matter if they're coming from Davis, Jackson, McKinley, everybody knows what preparation means. Everybody knows what respect means. Everybody knows what integrity means because we have that foundation of lessons that we're all teaching. But the cool thing is, while we have these components that we're all doing, we still have the autonomy within our buildings to really take the program and run with it. So what does PBIS look like in Jackson is going to look different than what it looks like in Devers.
Sure.
But the core components around Bearcat and Pride are certainly there.
I love this idea of unification, right? You've created one community, one unified group, one unified district. Even that switch from going, we're all Bearcats. I'm sure there's a little bit of, well, I like my mascot. I don't want to leave it.
Right.
But by creating all Bearcats, you've created a sense of we are one district and we are one community working at collective goals. And the idea of that, keeping it consistent, because the art transiency, and that happens in lots of districts, right? We have that transient population. And in allowing for that consistency, we allow for students to feel safe and comfortable no matter where it is they go. That they know, I understand the expectations because I've been learning this anywhere I go in the district.
Correct.
And that's a huge
And I
piece.
think that's been really important. One of the things that the district in general has been doing is trying to, create these systems approaches that we're all unified anyway. We are one school district, and we all need to be living by the same, principles that guide each of us. So the PBIS has been pretty powerful, and it's been, this year was exciting because just last week in May, all of our buildings were recognized with Tier 1 implementation fidelity. So
Congratulations to the district for that. All schools recognize at Tier 1. That's wonderful.
So that is awesome. And now we're ready to jump into Tier 2. And I know many buildings have already had their Tier 2 meetings where they've already identified key components that we have in place. And then again, identifying what our needs are so that we can start to develop plans to move forward for Tier 2.
The consistent theme from all of us looking at the academic side as well as the behavioral side is planning, collaboration, partnerships. Because as you had said, one person, one office, one building can't carry it all. Right. But the idea of coming together collectively, looking at alignment, looking at gaps, doing an audit, pulling in IU, pulling in PaTTAN, pulling in your teachers, your principals, your leadership team, central office, really plays a key part in strengthening and growing as a district. So I appreciate that. Something I want to ask, and I'll ask this of all three of you, is if you can just share some advice you may have for other districts who are listening to this saying, we can strengthen, we can grow as a district. What advice might you offer them that relates to the work that you have done here in the district? So Deanna, I'm going to start with you. If you can offer some advice to those listening.
I think the biggest thing for the math that allowed us to be as successful as we were is that we started with our staff. We started with our teachers. We asked them to come in, and we step by step explained it. We engaged in conversations with them. Were some of the conversations difficult? Yes, they were.
I'm sure.
Were there some times that we were not happy with what each other was thinking or saying? Yes, it was. But I think in the long run, that made us a better team. And so I would suggest keeping your teachers involved as much as possible.
Keeping an open line of communication with teachers, even though the conversations may be a little scratchy.
Scratchy is a good word, yes.
Jill, some advice you may have for the districts listening.
So I had that point as well. I had stay connected to classrooms because that is where the rubber meets the road, right? And we can come up with the best laid plans at the central office level, even at the school leadership level, but staying connected to what's happening on a day-to-day basis, hearing from teachers, being in classrooms and being as visible as possible to get that day-to-day feedback is absolutely critical to any of the components that we talked about. But then I think it is that two-level approach that you're doing that grassroots work at the same time. It can't be without the systems and the connectivity. And so really looking at all of the different demands that are placed on the different departments and grants that we have, and being intentional about building as many connections as possible. I'm a big fan of the work smarter, not harder strategy, and so being intentional in inviting all of the representatives to the table when you're taking on a new initiative or when you're looking at designing a new component to your instructional or your behavioral programs at the district and the school level. So the two-pronged approach.
And I love that collaboration piece because without that collaboration, if one person leaves, does the whole system fall down? That's not what we're looking for. When we think about sustainability, it needs to be all of us staying connected to the classroom teachers, the people who are doing the practice, but also those that are kind of guiding that work through the systems level. So that's great. Heather, how about you? Some advice for the districts listening?
So on top of this great advice, I would also say that, we need to slow down to go fast.
Yeah.
And stop
Huge
and
piece.
remember that we need to build the plan. We all get so tied to whatever our initiative is that, we just want to jump right in and we just want to get it done. But we need to make sure that there's a plan for everything and understand that it's not going to get done in 1 day, 1 month, 1 year, and it's okay. But we can do small steps and implement along the way. And you bring those key resources in. Don't be afraid to reach out to PaTTAN. Don't be afraid to reach out to the people who have the resources that could benefit us and help us learn along the way how to make better systems for us. And I think that's really been beneficial in helping us as a district just grow, because we've been reaching out to a lot of resources.
I'm going to stick with that phrase, go slow to go fast, and reach out to those people. We can't be experts in everything, but we can go and find those experts who can then identify where we can get our resources and who can help us with that. That's a key piece. Thank you so much, all of you, to Jill, Deanna, and Heather for sitting down and talking with us today about how the school district of the City of York has been growing and the efforts that have not always been easy efforts, but the efforts that they've gone through to grow and enhance the work that you've done for your students. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of you in the field. You truly inspire educational growth in your students every day. A special thank you to John Ragsdale for producing this podcast. We'll see you next time on PaTTANpod.